Welcome to this new interview by the Media Freedom Rapid Response Consortium. My name is Beatrice Chioccioli. I work with the International Press Institute, and I am joined today by Hannes Stummer of the organization epicenter.works to talk about Austria. Austria is considering a new counterterrorism set of measures, including stronger surveillance of popular messaging apps like WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram. So first of all, I would like to ask you, Hannes, to introduce yourself, maybe and a little bit tell us about the work that you do at epicenter.works.
Yes, my name is Hannes. I work at epicenter.works. We're a digital rights NGO for 14 years now, and we work on topics like state surveillance, digital IDs, and always with a focus on fundamental rights and privacy.
For those who are not familiar with the context in Austria, can you explain us what prompted these recent proposals to increase police access to the encrypted social media platforms?
The demands to get police access to encrypted messages have increased since last year's Pride Parade in Vienna. And the most recent incident was the Taylor Swift concert this August. And in all these cases, even though the means of the authorities were sufficient to prevent any harm whatsoever, so all these attacks could be prevented, and still the authorities keep pushing for access to encrypted messages, and also this August.
And Austria has a history of pushing for expanded surveillance powers, if I'm correct. I wanted to ask, how do you think that the balance between the national security and the protection of civil liberties, particularly what interests us today is freedom of the press and freedom of expression, how do you think this balance is being handled in the country?
This push for expanded surveillance measures with access to encrypted messages is not new. It has been turned down already 3 times. Last time was even by the Constitutional Court. So we even have a very clear ruling by the Austrian Constitutional Court that says that this access to encrypted messages with a government spyware is unconstitutional. And yeah, still the authorities keep pushing for it. And yes, this is, I mean, we see all these terrorist attacks that were planned could be prevented. So no harm was caused in the most recent examples. And still the authorities keep asking for access to encrypted messages. And this, in our view, this is not what a fact-based security policy looks like. Because we see the crime prevention and law enforcement works quite well. This is also what the Minister of Interior keeps highlighting. So the situation is quite good in Austria. And still, on the other hand, we have these constant demands for more access to private communications.
And did you want to add something to that?
Yes, and for this is, of course, I mean, if this would actually be implemented, even though we have this Constitutional Court ruling, this would, of course, also be a huge threat to the press, also in Austria. Because government spyware like this, government spyware that gives access to encrypted messages, affects everybody. It's not like you can limit it to a few suspects. We say we only use it on these 3 people. That's not how it works. So it will also affect journalists. It will also affect the professional secrecy of lawyers, for example. And this will also affect the sources of journalists, for example.
Exactly.
Because, yes. So it is a threat for everybody, including, of course, journalists and most notably also their sources.
So we have an election coming up in Austria. What do you think that this would mean for these proposals? Like, does the government, the upcoming government, have an interest in implementing these proposals?
There is a proposal that has already been sent for review. It is quite similar to the one that the Constitutional Court has already turned down. And there are also 4 parties that are in the parliament which are against this proposal, actually, and against introducing this government spyware. And we also have the ruling of the Constitutional Court. So I think the situation is quite clear. The facts are quite clear. And also, if we leave even if we leave this aside, we have to. I think it has to be very clear that this is a real threat. It's not just a theory. This is happening in countries all over. In European countries also. So we have countless cases where the devices of journalists and have been hacked, or their phones have been hacked, and where also, of course, their sources were affected. And this can have a huge destabilizing effect on a democracy. We've seen this in Greece, we've seen it in Spain, so it's actually happening. And I mean, we have with the European Media Freedom Act, Europe had the chance to protect journalists and their sources, but the law failed to do so because there's still, I mean, they included so many exceptions that it actually doesn't really prevent journalists from being spied on. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Hannes, for these answers. Thank you so much to epicenter.works for inquiring on this topic. And we, as Media Freedom Rapid Response, will continue to monitor and document press freedom violations in European member states and candidate countries.